Well, it is the probably biggest grey area outside of emulation when it comes to video games. Because honestly, there is no right or wrong answer. So, ranting about DRM and used games seems kind of redundant, but I figured, what the hell, I've got something to say about it, so why don't I go ahead and make a rant video about it? Except going over it, there's not really... I mean, there is stuff I can rant about, and I will go crazy with the ranting, but there's also stuff which it's just like... Yeah. Okay. Let's start with the beginning, okay? Do I support DRM? No. Do I support used games? Believe it or not, no and yes. Okay, to be exact with both of them, it's a no and a yes for me. I see the good parts in it, I see the bad parts in it. As it stands, though, the way it currently stands, it's a no, I don't like. Yes, I do like, but I'm not happy with. That's like the order, going with DRM and used games. So let's go ahead and start with the one which I can talk about more, used games. Now, a lot of people love used games, and don't get me wrong, I love them too. A lot of my games I've gotten used, a lot of my games are hand-me-downs actually. And, of course, it allows you to get games that are no longer in production. I got a copy of Left 4 Dead 2 when it wasn't in production anymore. I got a copy of the original Left 4 Dead pre-owned when it wasn't in production anymore on the 360. Do I have anything else? I think I got Uncharted 2 when that was no longer being produced, or at least widely produced. So I do enjoy used games, but the thing I don't like about used games is the fact that the developers get nothing from it. Absolutely nothing. And to me, that's a bad thing. I mean, okay, let's just get it out of the way. Ooh, GameStop is evil. They are using the used game thing, okay? It's because of things like this where I actually am somewhat supportive of DRM. Because that way, the developer can get money back from used games. And in itself, you know, they would get the cut that they deserve. Because, I mean, just because you hand a game back into a game retailer does not instantly mean that it is not the developer's product. It's still theirs, and therefore every subsequent purchase, I feel that they deserve to have a cut in that, be it less because it's used or no. And that is basically why while I like used games, there are certain aspects about it which I hate. Because as it stands, currently, developers are unable to get a cut from a used game. I mean, it doesn't have to be, like, massive. It could be, like, I don't know, 1%. Or 10% of the money from the used game goes back to the developer. Not like, oh no, 100% goes back to the game retailer. I understand that retailers need to like do these kind of things to stay afloat. Don't get me wrong. The age of physical copies, while still strong, is starting to dwindle in favor of digital stuff because, you know, we got things like Origin and Steam. And of course, you know, we've got like the PlayStation Network, Xbox Live Arcade, you know. So, like hard copies are sort of dying out, but they're sort of not. So I can kind of see why it's be like, oh no, we have to make these used games and not give a single penny to the developer of this game. But I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right in any sense of the word. Because the way I see it, the retailers believe that once somebody's bought it, the developer it's like a one-time purchase thing, and that is not the case in my opinion. As a developer myself, I don't feel that's the case. I feel like as developers we should get a cut of a game whether it's used or not. I mean, it's just, it doesn't seem fair. I mean, like, let's look at THQ. You know, they went defunct like I think it was a year ago now, because of poor sales. And what if they got a small cut from the, you know, from their used games, like the Red Faction games? I feel like they might have been able to keep their head above water, maybe for a year or two longer, maybe enough time to get another good, you know, a good, well-selling game out. But they didn't. Yeah, they weren't able to. And I'm not like saying like THQ's fall was due to used games. No, 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 no. I mean, THQ's fall was due to poor business practice and overfunding. But at the same time, if over the last like 5 or 6 years, if they got a cut from games that they've published when their U was like just a 1% cut, I have a feeling that they would have lasted maybe a bit longer, and maybe the hits won't have been so bad. But of course, we know how that story went. So I guess if you put it that way, I do like used games, but I feel that developers deserve a cut from these used games because it's still their product at the end of the day. I mean, it's like with... I mean, I don't know if this happens everywhere else, and if this doesn't happen everywhere else, then why should it happen to video games? I mean, it's like, if you get a used car, then... Oh, wait, no, it does work everywhere else. Because you get a used car, then the person who has a used car gets the entire bit of money. That's still stupid. It's like, the owner of their product deserves a cut, whether it's used or not. I know that people might be saying, oh, well, that is, I'm sure there's a word for it, but, oh, that's just meaning that everything we owe is owed by something else. Nothing is ours, blah, blah, blah. No, 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 no. You buy the game. It doesn't matter, like, who gets the cut of this thing, you know. It's still yours. You're buying it to take possession of it. Once you return the game back to, say, a game developer, you are relinquishing control of, you know, your ownership of that item. And it, you know, owes its own to the person, you know, with the video games thing. But of course, when the next person that buys it has to pay the cut backwards. You know, like, so say I buy a game, I pay the retailer, and some of that money goes, you know, most of the money stays with the retailer, some of it goes to the developer. Some of that money stays with the developer, goes towards their taxes and such. And, you know, then the government takes the money and throws it somewhere. I don't know how government spending works. I don't bother with that stuff. The only thing I look at is wondering when the fuck the UK is going to be getting its, you know, tax reliefs on video game development. That's all I'm waiting for when it comes to the government. Yeah, like, that, I feel, is the way it should work. And, you know, it's... How do I word this? It feels fairer to me if we go by that. I mean, yeah, sure, you'll get, like, the feeling like, oh, but then, you know, the retailers will never own anything. Oh, they'll go out of business. I don't think they're going to go out of business because they can just I mean, okay, store-wise, they may go out of business. Okay, that's probably a thing, but I don't think website-wise, I think they'll be fine website-wise. Like, Game is, you know, still going, GameStop is going, Granger Games is going fine, you know, they're all doing fine website-wise, and of course, even by stores, they're still going strong. It's like, yeah, I don't think, like, taking, like, a 1% cut out of a used game is going to instantly kill, like, retail stores. I don't think that's, you know, I don't think that's going to happen. Now, you may also argue that, well, if they did that, then they'd have to put the price up. Again, I don't really think so. I mean, I know that if you do the math, it all adds up kind of deal. I mean, like, what's 1%? If you get an Xbox One, you know, it's, what, 400 quid? 1% of that is 4 quid, and you sell like 1 million, and like one store sells like 10,000. That's, you know, 40,000 going to the developer. You know, I mean, yeah, sure, you can say, oh, well, that's a lot of money. It is, but I don't entirely think that it's like a game changer. I don't think it's something that will just kill like game retail. So, as I said, my opinion, I think I like used games. I don't like how developers are shafted with used games, and I would much rather like they get a cut regardless on if it's used or not. Now to DRM. Well, this one has crept up in the past couple of years, hasn't it? You have some DRM involving Steam. You had Spore using DRM. Some EA games now use DRM, such as SimCity. The Xbox One was meant to be DRM full? And you're probably wondering what I think about it. I am partly on the pro DRM side, but I'm mostly on the against. I understand why the DRM is there. It's to prevent piracy. It's meant to, it's meant to be one of the solutions to the used game thing that I've just ranted on for 10 minutes for. But at the same time, while I do like the idea of what DRM is trying to do, it's not executing it in a way which I can, support them with. How do I word this? Even though I've done it, and even though I somewhat still do it, I agree that piracy is wrong. I perfectly understand, that people won't be able to afford these games coming out all the time, so they have to pirate them. And they're just like, oh, well, later on down the line, I'll pay for it. But then you got those people that are just like, oh, I'm not going to spend any money for any developers, I'm just going to pirate the game. Those scumbags, who refuse to support the developer, they don't really deserve the product if that's how they're going to be. I mean, it's a little bit of a grey area within a grey area with the whole, oh, I'll pirate it and then get it later. I mean, like, I pirated Rome Total War, and, I didn't get it until, like, 6 or 7 months after I had pirated it. I could have very well just kept the pirated version, but no, I went out of my way, found the game, and bought it. It's hard to say. Was I in the right? Well, technically, I pirated the game. That automatically should put me in the wrong. But at the same time, I bought the game. Sure, it was 6 months down the line, but at the end of the day, I bought the game. And that's the thing with, is that really right? That's why it's a grey area within a grey area, because the whole thing, with the DRM thing and the piracy, there are a lot of grey areas, I've just realized. I mean, I'm talking about a grey area, and there's a grey area within a grey area, and then with that one, there's a grey area and a grey area within a grey area. Okay, the grey area I'm talking about is DRM. Within that grey area, there's piracy. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, on one side, it's a good thing because you can get games that are no longer in production. But at the same time, it's, still piracy. And then within that, is it right for somebody to pirate a game but then get the game later, or are they just completely wrong? I am going into one of the biggest grey areas outside of emulation, and that just blows my mind. But I'll try my best to keep it within the realms of just DRM. Now, with the whole thing with the DRM, as I said, I do support the idea of preventing piracy, and of course trying to get money back from the used games. However, I don't really feel... I don't feel like the way it's being done is being done right. I mean, it's like, okay, here's how it works currently with the DRM. You get the game, you put the code in, and a little bit later on down the line, you decide you don't want it anymore. You put it in, you give it back to a retailer. They put it on sale, saying that it's used for about 10 quid. Somebody buys that game for 10 quid. They then go home. They find out that it's got DRM, so they need a code. How much does the code cost? 10 quid. What I feel is unfair about that is that you're basically, normally when a used game is 10 quid, getting it used around 20 quid, you're not saving anything on used games. You're just paying for a full price game, which, as I said, I understand. People can't afford all these games sometimes. I mean, how much are games costing now? 50, 60 quid on consoles and 40, 50 quid on digital? It's a little bit, I can perfectly understand it. I mean, I'm like that. I've got so many games on my wish list I want to buy, but I can't afford them. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I don't know. It's just the whole paying basically the full price game for a used game just doesn't seem right. Now, do I have an answer for DRM? No, I don't. This area is so grey that there is no way in hell I can think of an answer. I can make suggestions for an answer, but I mean, it's the most simple one I can think of is when somebody hands in a game, the retailers put in a brand new code and sell it for 10, usual use price thing. That way, when somebody buys a game, they'll be spending the same amount for used games. They will be, and they'll have their code. But at the same time, that brings up to the whole thing, the retailer gets all the money. Well, then that's where you put in the whole, 1% cut thing. I mean, okay, yeah, sure, maybe the retailers will have to up the price of their used game, but that's only going to be like, what, £1? Yeah, I don't think that's like a big thing. I mean, okay, yeah, that's my idea to fix the used games and DRM thing. Have DRM, make it so that when you hand in a game, they, by law, have to put in a new code. They sell it for typical use price plus 1%. The person buys the game. The retailer gets, the most cut and then send a small percentage off to the developer. The person goes home to their console, they put in the disc, they put in the code, and instantly the game is unlocked. Now, of course, that does bring the argument, what if you want to lend games to friends? That one, again, is... Okay, typically... Steam's done something similar to this. Steam is doing something very similar to this with, what's it called? Family Share. That's it, Family Share. Where basically, you can allow allowed to play games with friends. Now, I know that, as it stands, Steam's not doing it fully right. Like, you can't play the game if a friend is playing it. I think they should, get rid of that, rule. And then maybe, the family thing will be really nice. And it's you can make it timed. So say it's oh, can I borrow this for a month or two? Then, yeah, sure, you just, right-click their name or, press X on their name, lend friend game, select the game, select how long, it's got a certain amount, it'll say, warning, you are lending the game for this length of time. When this time is up, you cannot lend this game for this length of time. It prevents abuse of that sharing system. And honestly, that's how I think would be the ideal DRM used game lending system. I could be horribly wrong, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going to be looking at this and thinking that I'm a fucking corporate pig who, money grubbing wants to, get rid of our freedom. No, because as it stands, I don't like DRM because of its execution. I don't like how developers are shafted in used game, but I am supportive of both. I guess that's the way you can put it. So, okay. To put it in simplicity terms, am I pro-DRM? No, I'm not pro-DRM as it currently stands. Maybe if they make those changes that I suggest, I'll probably be more pro-DRM, but no, as it stands, I'm against DRM. Used games, I'm pro-used games, but I'm against who gets the cut. I guess that's the simplest way to put it. Yeah, that's about it, really. That's all I can think about with, DRM and used games. So, I'll catch you guys next time.